Hey, welcome to Rose Yoga, Tapping into Heart Courage. And today will be the beginning of a special series I'm going to be presenting around stories from Mount Shasta. And I have my good friend, ally, fellow Earth Steward, Rainbow Warrior, Joseph Sparrow. We're coming live to you from the Sacred Fire of Mount Shasta, a place that is at 4,200 feet on the south facing mountain of Mount Shasta. And just inviting you into our living room, Joseph's living room. The mountain is right behind us here, and we're going to have our first installment of the Bird Report. Welcome, Joseph.
Hey, good morning, Veruschka. Thanks for putting this together. We've been talking about recording something to see if we can invite more people into our conversations. And so thanks for putting this together today.
Yeah, so it's going to be a little story time and welcome you into this sweet little cabin that Joseph did build. Place that I called home for a while for some seasons and got to Malama the Aina, which is to nurture the land. And it seems like all the decisions and judgments I've made in my life and the art and act of surrender led me here. So it feels like a destined path, a date with destiny in coming here, because the fire blocked my plans 2 summers ago. I guess it's 2.5 years ago now, the summer of 2021. And in June, I default made it onto this property that seemed like getting to Avalon, that only a set of circumstances could have had me find this place. A place in Shasta where it's hard to find places to live, residential living, all these things. And when everything was burning and on fire, grace brought me to the sacred land that it seems like many of our paths have brought us here, where we found out, even toward the end of me living here, still unwrapping synchronicities of things we had in common before we ever knew each other. One of them is that we both spent considerable amount of time on the Big Island of Hawaii, which in many ways is the new Earth in this Western world, because you are on an active volcano where new Earth is being born, and also cross-reference with, the kingdom of Hawaii, the living in Waipio Valley, where the bones of the royals have been buried for hundreds of years, and that we both were called by the sacred Valley of the Kings. And that is a major marking point in my life, and a major initiation to actually live from the abundance of the land there, where the river meets the sea, where there's abundant fields of taro root. The taro is a fundamental staple for the Hawaiians, and in Hawaiian mythology they also say that us human beings were birthed from the taro root. Have you heard of that?
Well, everybody's got a good story. I mean, we're all from the nature here, so why not it be the taro root,
Right. Sounds just like that's just what's coming to mind, like, as we are talking about origin stories. We're talking about, beginnings and being brought back to the origin. So yeah, so I land here at the Sacred Fire Mount Shasta, get to rent a cabin here. We are both aligned with and have been initiated in the act of treating the land as our hostess, as the mother, and to have right relationship with the land. And then there's the other part of being called by a sacred mountain. What does it mean to be magnetized to a mountain and feel like there's no other reason on the outside except there's just a knowing in your soul that you're supposed to be close to her and pay attention? and start opening up to what are the teachings, why the mountain, why are we here. So we've had the chance to do chop wood, carry water, and live close to the land, create habitat to grow your own food and live off of the food in your environment, which when I lived in Hawaii, you have an abundance of fruits, but everything else pretty much gets shipped in. So I myself, after living in Hawaii for 10 years, I've never eaten as local as I have while living here on the mountain. And getting healed by eating the beef, the wild raised cattle here, Shasta wild. I mean, things like I came here physically challenged, and the earth actually healed me within 3 weeks. I was free of nausea. I had my life force back, and so it gave me the energy to keep investing in living from what was exactly in your front yard. And so during that time, we've gotten to sit in these little rocking chairs and share many stories and have a lot of synchronicities from our lives revealed to us, including toward the end that we found out that we were both in the same place in Big Bear in 2007 at this gathering called Journey of the Heart. That was a gathering a friend of mine put together from all different shamanic cultures from around the world. And the theme that weekend was around keeping a fire burning. And someone was always tending the fire during those 3 days of many people coming there to receive healing, including my brother, who had a remarkable and profound experience. And probably remember this guy in the opening circle that we never spoke, but here it seemed like a destined meeting through just our own individual alignment with these values that we share and that have brought us to this point, and all the gifts that have come through us individually since the time we met, all from nurturing the nature and listening to what it has revealed to us individually, and then just coming together, sharing stories. And we find it's just a really valuable starting point, just to share our story, to discover the gifts with us of what's possible for us, what I call, be incarnated more fully while we're here on earth. And the answers seem to lie right under our feet. And so we're here right now, gathered by the grace of the mountain. And Joseph has been speaking about the bird report to share some of these illuminations that have been coming through while living this beautiful life of chop wood, carry water. He's the founder and owner of Elderwood, which is producing beautiful, beautiful medicinals from the mountain that we will be talking about. And he's the council of the Sacred Fire of Mount Shasta. So with that, I hand you the talking stick.
Okay, well, thanks, Veruschka. That was a lot of big island mythology there, thing that I find that both these places have in common is their volcanic nature, It's really fond of living on volcanoes. But yeah, this just being a first-time experience of kind of getting to know each other, in this way. So, yeah, my name's Joseph Sparrow, and I've been homesteading and living up here on the east side of Mount Shasta now for around 9 years without a townhouse. Wasn't able to quit my day job originally. There was a lot of starting with raw land, and wanting to do it in a good way, so I decided to always keep this in the happy spot. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and I wanted to keep it really sweet up here. So it took me a few years originally of coming and going, and eventually there's a all the resources we think we need to make the big jumps in our life or what have you. And at some point, if your prayer gets answered, but you're doing something that's just creating more, sometimes, there's no end to more. And so about 9 years ago, I decided to make the shift and see if I could really do this live in 4 seasons off grid up on Mount Shasta. And, it's awesome. Like right now it's early part of February. We've been having lots of storm cycles, and so there's like lots of snow, and in this off-grid story, the reality is that what that means is that you are the moving part in between all of your life support systems. And out in that world where people are like, hey man, what's your name? What are you doing? Type of thing, and in that question, it's like, my name's Joseph Sparrow, and I do whatever it takes, kids, right now it's like the snow moving machine, decided not to work at the way that it should. So I needed to get out there and, dig for about, 6 or 7 hours the other day. And it's nice to be that connected, and have made the decisions in my life where just keeping my access, and keeping that connection to have mobility and to be able to live out here, that I can put that much time into aspects like that in my life. So that I just start out by just talking a little bit about how I got here. And I might have to jump up at some point. I've got a couple of handmade copper stills going outside where I'm
always multitasking
working on doing the distillation process to make essential oils. It's totally awesome. And got a really good pile of plants. Today I'm working with the white fir from Mount Shasta. It's such a dynamic signature of just expressing its it's
well let's rewind to and I'm curious, why Mount Shasta? What brought you to right here in this spot?
Wow. Well, I mean, that's a lot of the story, but
in a nutshell,
I don't know about all of you guys, but a lot of things didn't work out. And so for different portions of my life, I would live out of my vehicle, or maybe even just side sling bag, craft box, and instrument. And I originally grew up in southern Arizona, and when I first kind of realized that there was something going on out in the world that was a little bigger than my neighborhood, and ended up getting to chase the last years of Jerry Garcia with the Grateful Dead, and ended up going to a few rainbow gatherings. And I'm like cruising with some friends my first time through California, coming up the Sacramento Valley, and there's this just like single peak glacier covered super mountain. I'm just like blown away. I'd never even heard of this thing before. I've been lived in North America my whole life or what have you, and nobody ever told me about this Shasta situation. And so I ended up coming up here, and I got to run around, do the hippie, and stuck around. There's a whole crew of us that stayed up in this upper area on the national forest there for weeks, and it was just a game changer.
Was there a rainbow gathering here?
Not here, but there was just such a traveling culture at that point, and these intentional gatherings that would happen up and down the West Coast, and Shasta just kind of being somewhere that was like a sky island, an oasis in a sense. And so that's in my late teens, probably like 19 or so, and life kept on going. But from there forward, I always kind of felt like I knew where I was at in the world, with like Mount Shasta being like the center of the compass. Like it kind of like became like a central bearing that kind of gave me a navigational point. And and I was always like there's not a lot of it developed. There's a few little small towns around it, a lot of national forest and bigger private land, timber type of scenarios. So like the opportunity to live on this mountain never really seemed like besides like living like a wild dude, like in the public lands would ever be a possibility. And but somehow or another, all trails led to Shasta. and so yeah, that's how I kind of originally started, falling in love with this place. So
What year was that where it first came on your map?
early '90s type of thing. Probably like sometime in like the 93, 94. I don't totally remember, but I'm 47 and I was 18 or 19 at that time.
So what do you feel like, what did it mean for you, this from the mountain? Like, oh, I need to be near there. I want to live there. Like, what was your why?
Well, at some point, I don't know if you keep working on stuff. There was a time in my life where, like, I heated up, is what I would say. Like, I started making good money at things that I appreciated doing. And so during that time period, I just kept working. But, all the chaos, just whatever that story is, you know what I'm talking about, keeping stuff together and the first through the fifth just coming up and just, hitting you hard every month and, blah blah blah, and but every time that I could get all of my chores done and things together, and maybe I had a little piece of time set to the side, I'd always come up to Mount Shasta, rather to put myself in a hotel, during the winter time, and drink coffee and hang out, and ski half days or what have you, or come up and just hang out and do the naked hippie by a river or something like that during the summertime. And yeah, so like it's always kind of been like that sweet spot, like if you could be here, if you could get your story together enough to have the permission to be here, it's nice, and
Let's talk about that permission bit, because it seems like this is a vortex area, just like the Big Island. People have, like, either the island opens up to you and like just makes you want to be there, or it kicks you out as fast as possible by getting hurt, by getting scared, by having bad nightmares there, and people like, I'm have to leave the island tomorrow. I thought I was going to be here for a year. I've seen young kids come break their foot by just walking on the street, not even on the lava, and having to hightail it out of there. And it seems like Mount Shasta is a similar place where you're magnetized and then you're given the red carpet or you're given the boot. And in what ways, what was your relationship to that?
Oh, okay. So yeah, there's a lot to it, well, it makes me think how it appears that just about anybody has the permission to visit this mountain. She's attractive. She's kind of calling you around. I kind of think that if you're on the path, whether you know it or not, at some point on that journey, you're going to end up on Mount Shasta. And so I appreciate actually kind of being here at a crossroads, in a sense, type of place. And, and there's a lot of folks that like really enjoy the honeymoon phase, of like ending up to a oasis spot of a, collective consciousness. And it's a good place, you can lay down your bundle for a minute, maybe like share some little shelter from the storm type energy, and talk about this journey that we've been on. And through that perspective of sharing story, kind of can show you a lot of different directions. And so yeah, like that permission to stay here is a little bit different. I've heard some people say that how people get to Mount Shasta is by burning all their bridges, which is kind of interesting, because I kind of took that into perspective, because that doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. There's a lot of gaps that we're crossing over, and different trails that we're doing in our life that are leading us nowhere, to say, whatever that would mean. You understand what I'm saying, I'm sure. And some of these bridges and connections, we shouldn't cross through. We should not be going in these directions. And so in a lot of ways, I do feel like I am somebody who possibly burnt a lot of my bridges to get here. Not because I'm looking over my shoulder, but in this other story that's been normalized in our generation, there's a whole other world going on, like a natural world, the opportunity to be as strong as the day is long, to participate in this great community of life, like as a member of it, and equal standing. It's awesome. Like we as people have a really special spot, in nature, and yeah. So like you start living like that. It's a lot of places that we've been in our life that maybe we don't visit anymore, and so that's some of the energies that I've had to adapt to be able to live here.
Mm-hmm. What is coming up for me and listening to just like even coming to the awareness that permission needs to be given, and like entering a place with humility, and also like the devotion in our heart, whatever path we thought we chose in our teens and our youth, and commitments we've made to spiritual paths, or aligned with things we've read or inspired by concepts, let's just say enlightenment, right? I think any of us who've ever leaned in that direction have had to go through a massive process of letting go and losing everything. And that's sort of like what the Big Island represents, the Pele energy, the death and rebirth. And, I've had the worst of times and the best of times, and I'm not the same person because of living on the Big Island and having learned from Gaia herself, Mother Goddess, after having really been indoctrinated of Eastern philosophy ways of very much patriarchal systems of guru disciple, even though you speak about the Divine Mother, it's still always been through like a father figure, like the guru, stereotypical guru figure for myself, the lens that I was like invited into spirituality. And so I needed the Big Island. I needed Earth to be my teacher. I needed Mother Earth to show me, and she showed me my worst fears, and I became the most creative. I got to connect to my creativity as a form of survival, and it's changed who I am. So it's like I see that all roads through the act of surrender, like where you end up is not by accident. So it's like, it is like the culmination of all of your choices and that surrender. And that act, like when you start listening to Pele and the Hawaiian traditions of making offerings to the land, of like, it's a call and response. It's a mutual respect that if you honor the living land, it will respond back to you with gifts. But you don't do it because of like, I'm treating this or this. Like, you have to come from a pure devotional sacred thank you, gratitude for getting to be here, to witness the beauty of the highest peak, to receive the abundance of the mountain itself, the waters that are flowing, the birds that are flying over, the trees that are singing the song of this mountain rooted deep in here. It's like life as the mirror. So if you made it here, it can be confronting to look at the mountain as your mirror. And at the intersection that we met, I was kind of brought to my knees to have been taken, all my potentials of living here taken away, and the places I was going to go blocked by the fires. And so it was an act of surrender to land here, but then it was the most abundant place for me to possibly land.
Hey folks, I gotta go check the stills real quick.
I'll keep having a monologue then. So when you give your offerings and gratitude to the land is going to reward you and respond. It's just not necessarily in the way you think or that you're trying to barter or anything, but it likes to surprise you. So it's important to have the innocence of a child to actually see the gifts they're being offered and respond with a sincere jubilation. And so in that intersection of me arriving here, we had an extremely hot summer, fires everywhere. I've never been as hot anywhere, like living in Texas and Hawaii, as I've been here on the mountain. And so just like in that pressure cooker of the heat, suddenly a glacier came down from the top of Shasta. It came down Mud Creek, which is the creek right at the base of the subdivision, and actually cut off the road and the access even coming here, that they had to create an alternate way of getting here, which was a little longer. So something that appeared to be like a little bit of a natural disaster became actually a gift to Joseph and I, and thus maybe the rest of the world, because we found this beautiful clay that came down from the glacier. So millions and millions of year old minerals, where we had to hike around the forest here in Shasta National Forest and find pockets from Mud Creek where we could find this pristine clay. And what is clay? Clay is all about detoxification, about purification. So in a 3-month period, we went out several times a week, the masculine and feminine side by side, in that total reverence and gratitude from the mountain for life, and like finding this gold, like something that can't be quantified in its value, to have like a finite amount of this beautiful offering from the mountain, that because of each of our individual paths, we had the eyes to see this great gift being bestowed on us, and us being able to offer this detoxifying clay. And
that was a wild summer.
Yeah,
it's like this whole crew of these beautiful women all of a sudden that were like on the mountain show up, and they're like hanging out on the property here, and me and a few other of my brothers were up here getting some stuff done, and this glacier, just comes tumbling down. Like prior to this, like this glacier was so big. Like,
and you've lived here a long time.
Oh yeah, this was
one-time event.
This was like a pretty epic experience, and but yeah, the largest glacier on Mount Shasta, this one that's like up in the collection, like just a super wild area with like the largest concentration of the springs on Mount Shasta, and it's called the Mud Creek Watershed area, and above it, like there used to be this like multiple 1,000-foot waterfall that came just like pouring off the bottom of this glacier, and you could just hear it in the canyon. It's just like had this like sound, and but yeah, like the glacier ended up snapping off in that year of like the Great Fires, where we had 3 major complex fires, burned down like maybe a third of the forest. Most people don't see it because it's like further away from the highways. It was a lot on the north side, and like the north and deep west side type of thing, and just the firestorms of the last decade, really came onto Mount Shasta really powerful that year. It's like rain and ashes. We're on like not mandatory evacuation. The glaciers are falling and knocking out our accesses, and then you got all your most crucials all bagged up and ready to go at a moment's notice type of thing. And and the complications, this affects cell phone service and all this great stuff, kind of important to like know your neighbors, type of thing. You might have like people that you like to party with, and enjoy the same things, but the people that are close to you, you have a lot in common with, and but yeah, like during that event, the kids came back, the ladies and everybody came back, and they had seen the just the swelling of the mud coming through. It was about ready to eat our bridge access at that point, and rolls these huge boulders when it's doing it like that, and the whole ground's shaking. Like, whoa, this is like power type of thing. And they all just like started playing around with it and covering themselves in the mud, and it was just like, had such a good vibe. It was like ecstatic or what have you. So it kind of became like a thing that we were up to. We got this wood-fired hot water heater and a bunch of bathtubs and stuff, and any good excuse to get naked, right? Type of thing. But it was pretty amazing, and I was like, wow. And just kind of being in this all things Shasta, and like her voice was so loud. She's like, I'm speaking right now, like this is like we are in a time of change and transformation, and so Veruschka and I, we kind of like went up into this area, and we were like playing around with it. We started discovering that like in that flow there would be these pour over spots, or like changes of the channel or what have you, where the water would settle into it and then it would be able to dry back. And this clay is all what can be carried in the water type of thing. It's like fully water soluble, and so it would dry back and create these skins and little like, you know, pillbacks, and you could gently collect this, and it's got like no sand or nothing, and it's like this micronized, you know, super special stuff. But it's almost one of those things where like, pay attention, because the glacier was still falling. It's always like the pulsing and rolling boulders and changing. It's like,
know where your car is while you're collecting.
Know where your
Where's
car
the
is,
exit
like,
strategy?
You know, just all these little accesses, known ones. But we're out, you know, we're observing about like a 5-mile stretch of this flow in these different access points. And, you know, of course, the National Forest guys, they're like, you know, got their little like what I call suggestions or what have you, to let you know that maybe you shouldn't go this direction. So we're out there kind of, you know, carrying our own weight per se, you know, knowing that we're out in that kind of realm. And yeah, and it's just like, you know, they're saying the air quality, you shouldn't even be outside. You know, you can just like, it's just the sun's just this like, look right at her all day, just this like orange glow.
Yeah, we had to wear masks during the day out in nature.
And it's like 100 degrees. Just seems like, you know, either the end is near or maybe this is it. You know, it's like, yeah, we've all been like, maybe we'll switch this up in our lifetime, and, you know, something will happen, you know. And like,
the fire came up 3 miles away. We drove out to the fire line, watching the firemen, like, having it under control. Like, is it on a need to know basis? Are we evacuating or not? But like, no, they got it under control.
Yeah.
But literally in our front yard.
But yeah, that's you know, like, whatever it takes type of energy, you know, like it's not necessarily an easier lifestyle to do this off-grid homesteading story, but it is better, you know, type of thing. And there's a lot of diversity to it, you know, like up here at the headwaters, you know, of our major watershed for the, you know, Valley of Sacrament. This thing's big.
Beginning of the Sacramento River.
We're losing our glaciers, and so all over the mountain right now, all sorts of our wells are going dry, and so I experienced that phenomenon last year and had to like figure out an alternative to water, you know.
And that was after one of our biggest winters and all the lakes filling up, like
over 38 feet of snow right here last winter. It was earning your snow goose feather in your bonnet last year.
Who knew that your wells would run dry? Like the paradox of that.
It's you know, and luckily, you know, I've been able to get my water back since then. But it even made me consider just like, you know, the entitlement to just direct water. You know how like in our modern culture we have access to move water in different ways that it wouldn't naturally be doing on its own, you know, like with all these wells and systems and stuff like that. And just like having that like kind of fall out on you, and really just like see that whole thing of like, just because you can, should you just be like squirting this stuff everywhere, just playing around with it in ways that it wasn't gonna be there in its own regard. And
it's like fundamentals that you get to strip down, like right relationship with everything that's being so generously offered, right? That we really get to have like a schooling with each of the elements like that: fire, water, earth, you know, mud. And we have a lot more story time to tell, but I wanted to bring this back to like your permission to be here, you choosing Mount Shasta, coming into right relationship with all of the fundamental elements here, and then your bridge to the story of you meeting your friend who's had a store with stones selling.
Mr.
And what?
Mesa.
Yeah, let's steer this convo there about.
Okay, I think you're kind of leading on to so yeah, again, like Joseph Sparrow, good to meet you folks. But I am up to something here that I am I've got an all things Shasta trade blanket is what I like to call it. And it you know, like if you need a job, like living where I live is the wrong spot. Like there's just not, nobody's going to pay you to work for them, or if you're going to travel over to the other side of the mountain to barely make it. I mean, it's just like, so if you're going to live out here, you got to figure out how to do something where you're at, find value based off of your environment and the things that you can do in your decisions. And so, like I've been here for a while, and, I got a good friend, Miguel, and he's had this Sacred Seed crystal shop in Mount Shasta on the boulevard there for about 8 years. And we're up there in the middle of the winter. I mean, there's just like no walk-in traffic. We've been in there all week, just like, screwing around, playing music and dusting things and chatting it up. And we're both just like hard-hitting dudes. I mean, like, as far as like, you want to win, like, put me on your team type of thing. And same with my other brother. And we're just like, this is so strange. Like, we're like in this like time of our life, early 30s or whatever, man. Just like, and our destiny is to be on Mount Shasta, and this thing feels like a ghost town. I'm like, what is going on up here? And, just chewing through that. But, back in the day, like I used to work with amazing character, Randy Ramsey, on the Mesa Market Farm in southern Utah. Like, just excellent dude. Get a chance, you just go check this dude out. But basically, at some point, he told me something like one of the most powerful yeses. If you can figure out the yes to this question, just a lot of power. And what it is that in the environment that you're in, what is the most commonly asked question that people say the answer is no? And so, yeah, Randy had told me that back in the day. And so, like, I was hanging out with my buddy Miguel one evening, and I thought that I'm going to ask Miguel the question. And so we're hanging out in his shop, and I ask him, hey, Miguel, what is the most commonly asked question in here that you say no to? Without a thought, without a breath, he goes like, is any of this stuff local? And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Okay. And then I thought about that. Like, Shasta, it's legendary for all this, like, rock shops and metaphysical stuff and just, like,
the only local thing awesome was the pumice stone coming down from the mountain that you can find freely.
The dude had some pumice stones, and he was like, yeah, there's some artists that make some stuff here, and here's a few photographs or whatever, but like there's more rock shops in this town than there's like gas stations and grocery stores. I mean, it's like it's outrageous. So you'd think there was a local find. You'd think it's like, wow, there's something really amazing local that comes from here. And so people for decades, like Shasta's destination for a lot of people, and they come here and they've been asking almost like in a like every tone of the choir the same question, and all of these people that are asked this question, they basically like stand up in another choir and just go no 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 no. And when I realized that, yeah, that's when I went into all the rock shops and asked the question, and it was unanimous. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so at that level of like, these different like trails, these different ways to like look at how you can go beyond like the known world into nature, whether it's wild harvesting, hunting, the Stoke style of extreme sports or whatever that thing is that like gives you this like direction into nature, right? Like that, like I love that, like, tapping into one of those or what have you. And so it kind of like opened up this like new thing where I was like, I'm just going to be looking for this, whatever that is. And so a few years passed by, and I've been like, maybe it's a rock, maybe, I don't know, and but like whatever's going on, I've had the homestead going on for about 3 years, and like I have something happen that's like a serious ball dropper moment as far as like what I'm up to, and like I get to this humble pie piece of the thing, and I really just tell the forest and just the nature that like, yeah, like my heroes have always been outlaws, and if it's my destiny to go down in some crazy burning ring of fire, then like pass me the cup, but meanwhile, if there's some other option, I'm super down for that one too, type of thing. And so like I kind of like say that prayer to the nature, and it's getting late in the season and we all are off grid, so like firewood, oak's the jam. And so like some of my younger neighbors that we know each other from being around the Native American church a little bit, and they asked me like, hey, Uncle Sparrow, you want to go out and do some wood runs? I'm like, that's a great idea, man. Why don't you guys tie up the kettle, and I'll throw in the saws and got the permits, and I know where this stuff is. Let's go out and do this thing in the evenings. I got chores or what have you. Oh, like I do right now. Let me check on the stills again.
You can't get this guy to sit down. and unplug. Always working. The nature of farm life. Yeah, the mysteries of, again, the call and response of the mountain. You know, when you ask the question, it might not be on your timeline that you get the answer, but the answer, when it comes, it's undeniable. So it's one of those stories.
Well, okay, they're still going. It's a little slow when it's cold, type of thing. But to kind of like fast forward the story, one of the things that I like to do when I'm out in nature, like let's say I'm just like out on some random dirt road and I'm just like out in the environment, sometimes you get the vibe. You're like, I'm getting a vibe or what have you. And so I got a bigger old Dodge diesel truck. This thing's averagely, it's got a pretty loud noise to it. So what I'll do is I'll actually park right there when I feel that vibe, put the vehicle in park, keep it running to where I can hear it, and I'll just start walking in concentric circles in all directions, about to the level of being lost. And I always joke around like, hey, I'm looking for maybe there was 14 lost crystal skulls. I don't know, maybe there's a lava tube full of gold.
We're open.
Who knows? 99% of the people never walk 99 steps from their vehicle. I'm already out on a random dirt road, man. Like every step you take further than that off the trail, like the possibilities of what you might find.
Besides the potential alien abductions.
Oh yeah, Sasquatch sightings and
wolves,
whatever it is, and maybe I'll cross over a dirt road or something like that. Maybe there's like a whole bag of like unmarked hundreds. I don't know. I'm just out there looking for the magic type of thing. I'm just out in the wilderness type of thing. And so I've been playing this game for years. It's just one of the games that I play in the wilderness. And so I'm out there with the boys. They're younger than me. So I'm like, here, you guys, get that all in the truck. Here's the wood, da-da-da. And I do one of those little walkabouts like that. In a few days of doing this, my buddy Bayu, I get back in the evening time and he asked me that question. He's like, hey dude, where do you keep going? And I'm like, well, I'm obviously not looking for oak. What are you guys doing out here? I'm looking for the magic. And but blah blah blah. We keep going down to these random spots, pulling out the instruments and just really having a good time, letting the sun set and the veil of the transition of the day to night happen and the great blanket of the night sky just come over. And I just love it when you can just feel good about being alive, you know what I mean, to just really just settle into that transition. And so me and some of the boys, we were just doing that, just having a good time out there. And on about the third or fourth day of doing this, I'm wandering around and I see this stick poking out of the ground. It's got all this twist and gnarl to it, and I'm like, oh, that's an attractive piece of wood. And so I start trying to pull it out, and it's way stuck in the ground. So I just kind of dig around with what I can, work with it for X amount of time, and I end up pulling out this branch that's about 6 inches round or so, about as tall as I am. I yank this thing out of the ground, and it is so heavy. It feels like it weighs over 100 pounds, like 3-4 times heavier than any other piece of wood I would ever picked up of that size. And I tap on it, tap tap tap, and it sounds like it's made out of clay or glass. It's all gray with all this twisty gnarl, and 90% of it was in the ground. I was like, wow, this is an old stick. And so I walked that back over to the truck where the boys are at, and it says we're pretty high up on the mountain, late in the season, so the sun's already traveling back down south, and so you get this it's not as high in the horizon, so you'll get this sunset type of phase up here on the mountain where it'll shoot the sunset through the top of the trees first, boom, and then there's this it's fall time. You'll get this second sunset where the rays come back through depending on how high and the angle where you're at on the mountain. You'll get these long rays that shoot in underneath the forest floor right as the sun finally sets. And so we're in that time period, and we're like, what is this branch? And so we let's cut a little tiny chip off of it to just open it up, see what it is. And so we end up cutting off this little chip, and as soon as the saw starts cutting into it, the aroma, it's so rich, wow, that smells amazing. And take this little chip off, boom, set the saw down and lift up that little chip, and one of those rays of light was coming through right at that moment, and it shines into this branch, and it's totally transparent, like fully amberized old growth tree branch. Every hair on my body stands up. I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think this is what everybody's been asking about. Like this is like, what is local type of thing. And it's funny how everybody thought it was going to be like a rock or something like that, but like turns out to be this relic from like the original old growth forest here that's fully amberized. And yeah, that find that happened around 11 years ago, I call this elder spirit wood. And I sent pieces off to a carbon analyzer named Beta Analytical, and had it carbon dated, and they say that from this first tree that I found, I called him Guillermo, um, but that it passed away in the early 1400s, like sometime around like the year of like 1407. So like, this is a pre-Columbian, supposedly for the first forged steel blades and European language was even uttered in this forest that was so immense that squirrels could, travel never leaving the canopy from Baja all the way to Alaska, is supposedly how immense this like super evergreen forest was, with these glacier filled springs and like deep feather rapid deep canyon rivers flowing out in these deep valleys, full bosques, old growth grass forests with like sycamores and stuff, just like it's like you just rewind the movie just not too long ago or what have you, and this world was way different. And that's the world that this tree had passed away in 100 years before that, even the changing of that world that we now think is normal, is so that's that's the find of the spirit wood that started me I guess becoming a more than just a cabin building kind of like construction work in kind of artist, but actually a craftsman, artisan, wild harvesting kind of trail of energy.
Yeah, I feel like this is a beautiful cliffhanger to enter into the gifts that then started being born out of the find of the spirit wood in our next segment.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. Well, thanks, Veruschka, for pulling this together, and thank you all you out there. Whatever the adventure that you're on at this point, it's a lot of magic. Like that. This rare sacred human birth, it's a treasure. And so just want to say thank you all for sharing some time. And hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again.
Yeah, and have a little more living room sit-ins, and may be inspired by your own backyard just by the story that we're sharing. See you next time. Thanks, Sparrow.
Hey.